Good evening, everyone. This is Robert Stevenson. I'm going to be calling to order the Southwick College Granville Regional School District School Committee meeting for this evening. Can I get a motion to enter into the meeting?
So moved. Second.
Show of hands to enter into the meeting. Aaron, let the record show the motion passes 5-0. Can I get everyone to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have consent agenda up tonight. Got any issues with that before we move forward? Okay, there's the warrants on the table. If you guys could take care of that, that'd be great. Superintendent Willard, do we have any correspondence this evening?
Excuse me, I do not. I just want to let you know, as school committee know, I have been approached by some media outlets looking for a press release regarding the PRS that a few different news outlets have requested from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. We sent it out to two people today.
Okay.
So anybody who requests it can have a copy of it.
Sounds good. Yeah, I was approached too, but we're sending one out
Well,
from you.
that's why I have to check. with you
No,
to make sure.
I think that's great. All right. Most exciting 2.5 minutes of the meeting. All right, McNulty, it's all yours.
All right, so first off, the mock trial team attended Clark University yesterday for the first round of competition between regions. We won Region 28. They spent their morning in a trial against St. John's Prep, where they worked hard to get 102 points, which is very impressive. They did sadly lose. The last time they won the region was 11 years ago, so congrats to them to making it this far. The National Honor Society is hosting their annual spring volleyball tournament in 1 week on the 10th. Students and staff are invited to make teams to compete against each other, and the winning team will receive Dunkin' gift cards. Juniors and sophomores are invited to attend the Baking National College Fair on March 18th. They can get to know a number of colleges across the country in preparation for their senior year. Clark University is, again, hosting the annual Connections Conference this Friday. Several students part of the Connections program here at Southwood will be attending. This is a yearly social justice conference where students and adult presenters share their diverse experiences and perspectives through hands-on workshops, and schools can intermingle to explore how to better support each other and make our communities welcome and supportive for all. Connections is also preparing their 8th grade facilitations for mid-April. There is still time to buy tickets for Anastasia. A small group of cast members are planning to go to Powdermill in the days leading up to the performance to give some students a preview and hopefully influence them to come watch the show. There will be a winter sports celebration for students and families on the 11th. Congrats to Jackson Beeson for qualifying for the All-State Championships and the long list of wrestlers who qualified for the state divisionals. And additional congratulations to the girls basketball team who made it to the state tournaments, and spring sports will be starting soon. Tryouts are on March 17th. That's all I have.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
The volleyball tournament, who can enter? I was thinking we should have a team.
School committee.
We should have a team.
You could try. I mean, we're open to it.
Nick's really tall.
I don't know.
Did you ever play volleyball when you were in high school? Or?
No, my high school didn't have a volleyball team.
Did you play volleyball here?
Track, yeah.
I was a soccer goalie. I don't know if that would help at all.
What do you think, Ted? You gonna join our volleyball team?
Really, this school didn't have volleyball when I was little.
No, Pam and I are gonna be the
Listen,
spikers.
As much as I love all things athletic, you trust me, don't want me playing volleyball.
You and I need a real. Yeah. We could do volleyball at a badminton net. Can we do that? Because that one may be able to spike.
Pretty size net.
No volleyball team for the school committee. Okay, next. All right, educational presentation.
Yeah.
Oh, here we go. Mr. Bernier,
Okay.
you're up, bud.
No, I'm gonna start
Jen's
off.
doing it. Oh.
Yeah.
We're gonna tag team it. I didn't build it, so.
Yeah. So I'm going to be presenting to you an overview of the budget process and the highlights or the impacts to this year's budget. Oh, can you go back?
Yeah. Stop me.
You can go back to the first page.
Yeah, hold on, it's tweaking out on me.
It's-
Sorry about
No,
that.
that's okay. You don't really have to go back to the first page. It's just.
Oh, you're good. I'll make sure. You bet. We'll just start doing this first. We'll go. Okay, so this year's budget, you're going to see it look different than it has in the past. This year's budget that we are presenting to you tonight does not have out-of-district vocational tuition in it. But it does still increase because as we go through it, you're going to see some very large fixed cost increases to the budget and some cuts that we've already made to the budget to bring you forward this proposed budget tonight. So the projected timeline is we're going to be presenting the budget to you tonight, March 3rd. Next Wednesday, we're going to be holding a public budget hearing for all three towns, the public, to come and ask questions regarding what we're presenting to you tonight. I'm sorry, we also have a FinCom meeting tomorrow morning where the school committee, if they have extra questions or would like us to make some changes to the budget, we can talk about that tomorrow, and then we'll tweak the budget if necessary and bring that forward on the 12th. On the 24th, the school committee will vote on the budget. And we will go forward from there, awaiting other final renditions of the budget until May when we get to town meetings. Please remember that the numbers that we have used are the numbers that we use every year from the governor's cherry sheet, and we know that there's going to be different variations when it goes to the House Ways and Means, and before it becomes the final budget, but these are the numbers that we have. So as always, we always start with a focus on our educational initiatives. And the initiatives are going to be a continuation of our science of reading. This will, believe it or not, be year 5 of the science of reading. We're going to be starting with incorporating some writing. But if you remember, this was a huge pedagogical shift from going from balanced literacy to the science of reading. Last year, the teachers were like, we really need just another year to really continue fine tuning our practice on this. It's very heavy data driven and it's very prescriptive teaching. And so it takes time to really develop your skill at it. The other thing that we really can't wait much longer for is writing. So we are going to start incorporating writing next year, but it won't be as strong. It'll be PD light on writing. And then hopefully the following year, we can really dive deep into the writing. We're also going to be working with the Open SciEd curriculum for science. We're also going to be continuing with data-informed teaching practices across K through 12 and the multi-tiered system of support, which is we use for social emotional. We use it for all of our students so that we make sure that we're meeting their social emotional, their academic, and all of their needs based on what they need at that time. So as we put the budget together, those were the things that we really focused on and wanted to make sure that we had that in the back of our minds as we were going forward with budgets when we were eventually going to be talking about cuts. So I just want to show you our foundation enrollment over time. As you can see, we dropped significantly year after year. There was a big drop this year because of the vocational education kids that came out of our foundation enrollment. It would have been pretty stagnant had we not had that, but because we removed the vocational out of district students, we did see another significant drop. But that is what our foundation enrollment is going to be based off of. That's almost a 600 student difference from FY13.
So about 50 kids a year.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable.
And Jen, remind me again, the foundation enrollment determines which element of funding for us?
All of it. Chapter 70 and your minimal local contributions.
Okay.
So a few years ago, they asked to see this because of the declining enrollment.
You want to go this side?
So I did FY24, FY25, and FY26, so you can look at each of the individual towns. All the towns are seeing a net loss. Southwick over the past 3 years has lost 39. Holland is 14, and you're going to really see that
when we get into some budget summary pages, there's been a significant change to Tolland's minimal local contributions. And Granville has seen 25 student net loss over 3 years.
And this is net loss to this district, correct?
Yes, this is our foundation enrollment.
25 and 25 out of district.
Yeah.
And then the bar is 25, which is.
So with that being said, we know that the foundation enrollment dictates our chapter 70 funds and our minimum local contributions. We also know that there was a big shift this year because some of our chapter 70 funds went to our 3 towns. And also some of our minimal local contributions, you'll see in a later slide, were slashed. One of the things I want to show you though, is one of the things that we're going to talk about later, as in fixed cost increases, is special ed out of district. Now, this, when I went from FY23 to FY24, it was significant. And then we went to FY25. This isn't a Southwick, Tolland, Granville issue. This is across the state. In fact, MASC, your committee, is putting out presentations on the cost of special ed. And my association, Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents, they've put out a paper too, talking about the impact that special ed, its costs are having on districts and district budgets. Now, I also want to remind you that we do pay for 3 in-district special ed programs that we developed during the COVID. Those 3 programs are still part of our district, but we fund them through rural school aid. So although we added 3 additional in-district programs, we haven't actually put the cost in the operating budget because we've used our rural school aid to offset that cost to our district. Now we're going to go a little bit more into the budget. So why am I sharing this slide with you? So this slide is what we call net school spending across the Commonwealth. Net school spending is what a percentage does your district pay for the education of the students in its district. Every single school district must spend 100% of net school spending. If you spend less than that, then you're going to have to make up, say you spent 97% and you don't meet net school spending, the following year, you're going to have to meet net school spending plus 3%. So you have to spend a minimum of 100%. Our district, does anybody know? Please go back.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. Our district, we are between the 100 and the 105 in the first column. We operate at net school spending at 102. That means we spend 2% above what the state says that we need to spend minimally to keep our school district up and functional. Now, I want to tell you what school districts we're within. At 100 of net school spending, we're with Holyoke, Malden, Springfield, who are also major recipients of the Student Opportunity Act. We're also with Spencer East Brookfield, who I spoke to their rep with last Thursday, and she is now the new Director of Rural Affairs for the governor of our state. At 101 of net school spending is Brockton and Taunton, 2 school districts, again, that receive the majority of that SOA money that's being infused into the Chapter 70 funding. At 102 is Chicopee and Southwick, Tolland, Granville. So out of that slide of 100 and 105, we are with the company of all the school districts that are receiving a majority of their funding through the Student Opportunity Act. And the only place that is similar to us is Spencer East Brookfield. That's why when you see the budget that we're presenting tonight, you need to understand cannot keep functioning at 100 or 101 or 102. Because already with the budget that we're bringing forward tonight, we've made significant cuts to the budget. But that is where we're operating at. And that's where what we're coming to you with today.
So out of the 24 districts from 100 to 105, we're
Mhm.
basically the sixth lowest
Correct,
of that.
correct.
So the numbers at the top of the bars, is that indicating the number of school districts across the state that are
At
at
that-
that NSS
that
funding
percentage.
level?
Yes,
So basically, we're
At the bottom,
at like the 2%.
right? Okay.
which
So
means,
98% of the schools in the district spend a higher percentage of their net school spending in their budgets than what we bring to the table to present to the towns every year. So I know there's always questions that come up. Are we spending, or do we need to spend what we've got? Are there things on there that we don't need? There's not a lot of room or fat out there to cut because we can only at most cut 2%. Because then we have to spend 100. We can't go below that because then we're gonna get penalized following year because we gotta make up for it. So,
and Nick can share, what is the things that they don't count in net school spending?
Transportation's not counted, debt service is not counted, capital projects are not counted. Any sort of like community civic things which are rare, but there's sometimes spending on them. So some of the largest drivers of a budget that I just listed they don't count towards net school spending. So, when you take a look at our budget as a whole, that whole big bottom line number is not the 102%. That would be more than it, but a lot of it doesn't.
right.
Next one.
Do you wanna?
I'll,
No, I'm not ready for this
Oh,
yet.
sorry.
You know, the governor's budget, I just wouldn't have put those there. Yeah, governor's budget.
right here?
Yes, so the governor's proposed budget this year has the set enrollments. So required district required local contributions. Southwick increased $57,617. Last year, it was about $450,000 Southwick saw as an increase. This year, Granville sees a decrease of $267,679, where in the past, they used to see an increase of about $120,000 a year. Tolland saw a decrease of $90,804 in its required local contribution.
And again, this is because of the students that are out of district. So while they're not going to be contributing to the minimum local contribution, they are responsible for the tuition of the out of district student.
Correct.
So what we ended up not realizing, or our guess that we talked about last year,
I did it.
was we knew we were gonna lose local contribution, but we didn't know that we were gonna lose chapter 70 funding. So when they moved those kids from ours to the towns, the chapter 70 funding went down as well for the district, but it went up for the towns because the town now gets chapter 70 funding for those kids. Plus they get a transfer of the local contribution that they don't have to pay to the district. So now they can pay to offset the kids. So I think the nice thing is I don't think that hit is going to be as high on the towns as we initially thought.
But it's harder for us. And now, correct me if I'm wrong, but weren't we initially told when we were having these discussions a year ago? Weren't we initially told that our chapter 70 wouldn't be affected, or is that just an incorrect assumption that we made?
I think it was an
That's the
incorrect
definition.
assumption because we were all going under the hold harmless line. Well, it's hold harmless up to a certain point, and if you move the kids from out of district vocational, that chapter 70 funding for the district will go down. But I guess the thing is Nick, tell me if I'm wrong here, this is a 1-year readjustment.
It should be.
Because it's not like,
So what do you mean by that?
well,
That's
because
what you're
we've shifted everything, right? So the kids,
Right.
we've reallocated where their home base is.
Right,
We've readjusted chapter 70. Now that that's done,
Okay.
now if there's a $30, if there's a $30 increase in pupil, we're gonna see that again. So that money we're gonna be back to hold harmless.
But basically, we've reset what our
Yes.
hold
Yes.
harmless
Yep.
is.
Absolutely.
So our hold harmless was up here, we've just pressed reset and it's now down here. Yes?
Yes, but that money has gone now and is transferred over to the individual towns.
So we're not likely to see another significant drop
Ooh, I don't
in
think so.
chapter 70.
No, I
You
don't think we'll
should-
see any drops. in
What
chapter
about minimum local contribution? Are those trends likely to continue,
Those?
or is that a
No.
one-time
No, I
thing
think
as
that's
well?
I think that's a one-time adjustment too, because now you've got, it's gonna be reset at that level. Because I mean, for Southwick, the last couple of years, we saw what, $500,000 almost in minimal local contribution increase every year. Because what they're doing from the state side is what, at least we talked about it last year, Russ, is that the Student Opportunity Act, they're basically filtering that cost into the towns through minimal local contribution increases.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems that if we're sort of like changing our set point this year, that means that the budget that we create this year, it is even more important. Because it's sort of going to set the standard for what we can and can't do in the future.
Correct.
It just seems to me that
We're
it creates a little bit more urgency this year to get it right.
Well, I mean, we always have to get it right.
Yes,
I mean,
but if we're anticipating that we're not gonna see the same kind of fluctuations, either positive or negative, in the future, then we're gonna have less wiggle room to make changes in the future, I guess, is where my train of thought
Well, I
is
think
right
what
now.
we'll see is, I think next year you're gonna see minimal local contributions increase back to the levels that we had been seeing for the trend up
Okay.
until this year. So I think
Even if we still consider, even if towns still continue to have large out of district.
oh, yeah, because all we're doing is resetting that.
Okay,
So now you're gonna end up seeing that we're gonna have a little dip this year because we re-juggled where everybody is.
okay,
Then I think we're anticipating that trend line to go back to where it was before.
okay.
It should go. I reached out to Desi about the hold harmless thing because I was shocked when I saw the actual
Mm.
chapter 70 funding in the negative. I was like, I've never seen that before. So I talked to Rob O'Donnell from Destiny, who is basically the director of school finance up there. And it's because the students were moved to the towns. If all of those students, they went to like a private school somewhere, you wouldn't have seen the same shift. But because they're now, on the town's minimum local contribution, whereas last year the towns didn't have one, other than us. They didn't have their own. Right? And Colin doesn't, again, because there's no, not
a
in
district.
chapter 70 vocational students there. So my understanding is that's a one-time thing. I mean, I don't, I think we'll still be a relatively flat hold harmless chapter 70 district. But you're not gonna see it in the negative again. And as far as the minimum local contributions, I think they will go back up. I don't know if they'll be at the levels where they were last year or even this current year. That's impossible to tell without looking at DOR information that's not even out there yet, but it shouldn't be in the negative. Because we're not gonna lose 50 students to the towns again.
Right, I understand.
Your voc enrollment might go up, I don't know, 3-4 kids.
But that won't change
No,
that because
that's not
they're not going out of where we're going.
Yeah, and our baseline is different now, as Rob said, we basically reset.
Okay.
So if you go to the next slide, that's is where you're gonna see a major impact on the budget. So last year, we had a $502,000 required local contribution increase to this budget. This year, we got a $300,000 decrease in required. So that's so usually we expect about 500,000. This year, not only you're not getting that 500,000, but we took a $300,000 hit. Now, granted, $1.2 million that we were paying in vocational tuition cannot be lost on this because that is not in our budget this year. But as I said, although that was removed, there were other impacts to our budget. Can you go down, not to the next slide, but the one after that one?
Right here?
This one, yep. So why was there, we're gonna go over the budget with you in a minute, but I just wanted to quickly do an overview so you don't like get shocked when you look at the numbers. So why was there an increase with no out-of-district vocational tuition? Yes, our minimal local contribution went down. However, our health insurance increase this year was $267,000. Last year it was $40,000. Was a 14 point something increase on health insurance this year. We can't control that.
And that's making no changes to our level of contribution in our policy.
Correct.
Making no changes to our policy holder or anything like that, correct?
Correct.
We didn't do anything. It's just a straight rate increase mandated by the insurance company
And who is
to
our
the
insurance
holders.
company?
Maya. There's also a delta between E and D from last year in school choice of $195,000. So last year, we, at the end, when we were trying to bring down the discretionary, we moved, our school choice was over 1,500,000. We don't even have enough money in school choice to even do that this year. So we did increase our E and D from
650.
yeah, 650 to 900,000, but our school choice, we had to drop significantly because we just don't have the money in that revolving account anymore. And also last year, we put 5 administrative salaries in school choice, and 2 or 3 teacher salaries. We could only leave, because of the increase in some of our special ed, and the amount of money that we have in school choice, we had to move 4 of those admin positions out, and they are now in the operating budget. So that's why you're gonna see an increase too in the operating budget, because last year there were 5 administrator salaries were not in our operating budget, and this year they are. We also have raises of about $500,000. I really can't give you an exact number. We did just settle with the paraprofessionals for an 11% raise over 2 years. And with our custodians at a little over 8% over 2 years, that we had to adjust for in this year's budget. Out of district special education, as I told you, it's gone up 325,000. There's been a decrease in minimal local contribution in chapter 70 of $392,000. We've seen a maintenance increase of 120,000 and our school choice and our charter school increase of $165,000. Now, those are things that we just don't have any control over. These are all the major factors of what are at play in our budget this year. So we're gonna go into the budget in a minute, but I just want to
Hang on a
go.
second. I think Pam has a
Oh,
question.
yeah.
Yeah, questions.
Yep.
Okay, so are you saying that we have less E and D and less in our school choice revolving account right now than we
no.
did before?
We have more money in our E and D
Okay.
than we did last year, which is why we can offset it at 900,000. We were certified this year at 1.1 million. We're using 900,000 of it to offset this year's budget, which leaves us at $200,000.
Okay, but we do have a decrease in our school choice revolving account.
Yes.
Okay, so a question that I'm anticipating us getting from the public is, so a decrease in the pool of money that we have available to us, but are our school choice revenue numbers down?
Yes, they're going to be for now forward, because we used to operate with 6 classrooms at elementary schools. We now operate at 5. We don't take as many school choice, which is why when the pot of money is gone, it's gone, because we can't replenish it at the rate that we used to.
So we've reduced a number of classrooms to
Yes.
reduce costs associated with that.
Yes,
But the outcome is that we can take in fewer school choice kids.
correct,
Okay,
Without increase in class size.
correct.
That's the challenge. Now, the other thing to keep in mind, and this is where it gets tricky, and we've talked about this the last couple of years. The E and D account and the school choice account are accounts that we typically use to offset some of the budget on an annual basis to lower the discretionary that we ask for the towns. The other thing that we've been trying to do over the last 2 or 3 years is become more and more efficient with line items in the budget. the way that money ends up going into E&D is if we've got, let's say, a line item that we budgeted for $100,000, we end up only using 60, that 40,000 of excess goes into E&D, which allows us to offset the budget for the next year. Now, as we continue to get tighter and tighter and more efficient and more directed with the budget line items, and we're asking the principals to be smarter and to be more accurate with what they're putting in there. The downside to that is it creates efficiencies that unfortunately decrease the money that was going into E&D.
Well said.
So,
You
do
can
you know what I mean?
repeat
So
that.
as we,
that would
that
help.
doesn't mean that this is a bad thing.
Right, I
We have
get you.
continued to ask the district to be smarter and more prudent with their money. If we didn't, the E&D would be flush, but the discretionary ask would be $2 million instead of $1 million. So it's not, this is a de facto result of us and the district and whoever is using that money being more efficient. That this is a result of it.
Yeah.
Did I, on the right page with that, Nick?
Well said, I
Okay.
think.
Well said. I couldn't have said it
Now,
better,
the problem is
actually.
I won't be able to be there next week. Nick will be there.
I'll watch the tape before.
Okay. I mean, I've warned everybody about this the last couple of years, that as we continue to go down this path, this will be a result of this, and it cannot be looked at in a negative light, going, well, wait a minute, what are you doing wrong? You're mismanaging the E&D when it's the 180-degree opposite.
Right.
The better we do, the less amount of money we get in E&D.
So another question, the raises increase, does that take into account anticipated raises for the teachers?
Yes.
That because we're in negotiations right now?
Yes, I had to come up with some number because I had to build the budget.
Yep,
And I got my marching orders from FinCom.
Okay, and then this may be the inappropriate time to ask this question, it might be coming later, but what's driving the maintenance increase costs?
Oh, well, there was I can answer most of that.
Yeah.
Over the last 5 or 6 years, we have not properly allowed increases in a lot of the maintenance line items. And we'd asked that department to do more with less, or keeping it together with less, and we've gotten to a point now where we can't do that any longer, and there needs to be some reallocation or some assignment of funds there to allow the proper maintenance and the proper procedures to be able to be done, to be able to keep the grounds, the buildings and grounds of the district running in acceptable order. Is that a fair assessment, Mr. Wykander?
Wow.
Okay, so,
And the towns might ask for a little bit more detail on that.
no, that's fine, that can certainly be given. And there's not like, that 120,000 is not made up of like 45 different projects, it's basically 4 or 5 items that we've had to significantly make sure that we're accounting for.
Yeah.
Was that okay, Jan? Did we-
Yeah, I think we let them up each line item, like, was it 20%?
It was a targeted selection of accounts that have been habitually overdrawn. Overdrawn's not the right word, overspent over the last few years. And it's targeted specifically to the areas where we've seen the most cost increase and that are just completely out of order.
And there's like less than 10 of those, right? There's not a
Yes.
whole bunch of them.
Yeah, it's about 3 per building and
Yeah.
then 2 general.
And then the last one up there, the school choice and charter school, does that mean that we are sending more students out for school choice and sending more students to charter schools?
Yes, so we got an email actually this year. This is the first year we've qualified. There's actually a vote our school committee can make if more than 1% of your foundation enrollment attend a virtual school. We actually have reached that cap. We are having more of our students start attending virtual schools under school choice because it fits in with their lifestyle. If you're an athlete, we were talking about it today at lunch. We have a student who's a race car driver. We have a student who plays on
ice hockey team. We have students who are very involved with their horses. We have students who figure skate. And so attending school virtually for them just makes sense with their lifestyle. We have people who motocross and they do it. So they attend one of the two virtual schools in the state. And that's where we've seen the greatest uptick in school choice. We really don't have a lot of charter schools because we're only there's PBPA and then there's
And
the,
we're gonna be dropped. from
Yeah.
PTA.
we're gonna be dropped from PBPA and then there's the Chinese immersion
It's a
school.
bad thing we're getting dropped. from?
No,
No.
they're just reallocating, and so we'll no longer be a first choice district. So it used to be, if you lived in one of 35 districts and you applied, you were in their like catchment area. And they would take from those areas first. And then if they had openings, they would take from other areas. We, along with about 15 other districts, are being removed from their first round of catchment.
So that's not a bad thing.
No, it has nothing to do with us. It's just they're starting some bus runs and they want their students to be from closer to them.
Okay.
And so our students could still apply, they just wouldn't be considered part of, we're not in like their catchment area.
So like when kids say go to virtual school,
Mhm.
okay? Obviously, we're paying their tuition.
Yes.
Now, is the issue that their tuition is more than what we would pay per student if they were educated here? Or is the issue it's just not going to us, it's going out of district?
Right, we're paying for it. They're in our foundation aid, but we're paying out of it for their school choice salary.
Are they costing us more per pupil?
Is it costing us
than
more per pupil than if they were in district?
In district, yeah.
Um,
I'm assuming the answer would be yes, but who knows? Yeah, no, I don't think it's probably
5,000 if you
significant,
go to
but
a school.
it's not like going to an out-of-district
Virtual
vocational
Again,
school, right?
No, but it's
No,
still one of those
no.
situations where they don't go in solid numbers.
Right.
So you get 1 year.
Yeah, no, it isn't
there,
like,
yeah,
it isn't like we have like a whole half
Yeah,
class. with, like,
yeah.
they were-
I'm just trying to understand what's driving this increase.
Jen, what was the vote you were talking about? Is that something that we can do that would affect this year's budget?
Not this year's, but if we get close again, we can next year, yes.
Okay.
We
Yeah,
didn't take
it's
a
the-
vote.
No,
I know,
Okay.
I'm just saying. I didn't know whether it's possible to take a vote and say we.
You can.
This year.
you can,
What would be the vote?
You would
To
vote
cap it at
limit,
1%.
1%.
Oh, and
So
what are
right
we
now,
at now?
1%.
Just over like 1.0, 1.1.
We're just at the 1%. Because for us, that's one kid that went more this year than last year. And that's how ours, that's because we're such a
Couldn't be.
small.
Where
city.
aren't we at, what are we at, 1,000 kids now?
1,200,
Okay, so 1% would be 12.
right, but
But to
say,
push us over.
To push us over from.
Right, no, but
0.99.
so we've got more than one kid.
Yes.
oh, no, we have about
Must have-
12 kids.
There we go.
Yeah.
Okay.
But last year we weren't, they didn't say anything to us because we weren't over the cap.
I got you.
But just one kid out of, say we had 11,
One more
and then
kid.
one more
would put
kid
us
went,
over.
and then it puts us over
So
the
if
cap.
we voted not to do that,
We can. You can.
no, okay, hang on. If we voted not to do that,
Mhm,
or I mean, to vote to limit that at 1%,
mhm.
that would just mean that if we had a child in one of these special circumstances that wanted to be able to exercise going to a virtual school, we would, they wouldn't be allowed to do it.
Mhm.
Is this an issue for this year?
This isn't a budget, this is not impacting
When do
our
we
budget.
know, when do we know? So, but these choices would be made prior to the beginning of the school year.
Yes, you could take a vote now and cap it for next year, because the kids that are already there
But
would have
next
to
year
be
would be fiscal year 26?
Yes.
Or 27?
26. You can take it for this year, because Erin just finalized our school attending report, so she would know the exact numbers of kids that are at at the virtual schools.
Okay, but this is a fiscal year 2026 budget. Correct?
Right, so that's what we're sending.
Right, no, but if we were to vote to limit it, it would have to be limited for fiscal year 27,
I believe that's correct.
Oh, okay.
right?
That's
okay.
my understanding.
No, that makes sense. Because we're making a decision on what's gonna happen in the fall.
Right.
So we can't take a vote now that would limit, but these kids don't choose until the summer.
Which you
Yeah, I think
Could.
we can vote to limit now, because that's a predicted number.
Right.
That's a predicted number. I think you could vote to, so then it would cap. And that
But
number
those kids
might
would stay
slightly
in.
change. The kids who were there
No,
would stay,
I don't
but it
think
wouldn't
it's
go
as
any
easy a
higher.
decision as we think it might be.
It's
because
not.
I don't know whether, and again, we can discuss this
There's a
later.
lot of philosophy.
Yeah.
And
there's a lot
that's
of
where I
different
was going.
things
It's
here.
very philosophical.
All right,
So I'm gonna turn it over to Nick, but I just wanna, before we start looking at the line items, I just wanna go over one more time the impacts to the budget. Which are like I call it the highlights reel. We had a fixed cost increase of 267,000 in health insurance. We had 4 admin positions move from school choice to the operating budget because we simply just don't have the amount of money to spend in school choice that we did last year. We had a decrease in offset with E&D and school choice. We had a 300,000 decrease in MLC, which is typically over $500,000. Had an increase to special ed out of district. And in this year's budget, it is not level service. This is a budget that we are bringing forward that has 9 full-time positions cut from last year's budget that are either Unit A or one of our, and 2 of our codes. So we have 7 FTE teachers, Unit A, that have been cut. And we have 2 instructional coaches that have already been cut. And that's the budget that we're going to be presenting tonight.
and on that last point, Jen, that is not willy-nilly
No,
decided, right? There's data that supported why we're making those decisions.
they are, but we're going to feel it
No,
because.
I understand, but it's not like you just we just woke up one day, it's okay, we're gonna cut 9 FTEs.
No, we looked at where the budget was, we looked at where we thought we could get it.
Yeah.
And we knew, it was going to be we knew there was going to be a discretionary, even with these cuts. I'm still, had difficult time, Nick and I, when we discussed we met last Friday with our heads together and we did the budget, and the discretionary is what the discretionary is.
Yeah, but it's the discretionary. I want everybody to keep this in mind when we look at this here, the next slide. The discretionary number, we talked about there being a reset. It's a reset of everything. If we didn't have as big of a minimal local contribution reduction in the district, the discretionary wouldn't be as bad. But yet now you've got money moving over to the towns, you've got different money flowing to different spots. When we start looking at this, I want the towns to be, they've got to look at the overall impact, because I don't think when you look at what the school budget's gonna look like and what the extra cost for going to the out of district tuition. It's, you put that all together and you look at the reduction in the minimal local contribution. I don't, and Nick and I talked about this, we're gonna put something together. I don't think the difference between last year and this year, when you add all of that up together, it's not gonna be $1 million. It's gonna be somewhere in between, where when we squeeze all of that together, there are offsets in there.
So totally get everything that you're saying. Okay, and if we look at these 6 boxes, right?
Yeah.
When this is presented to the towns, okay?
Mm.
The issue that they're going to have is with the top middle one and the bottom right one. Because they're going to have a hard time justifying that in their brains, that like, wait a minute, we have increases to the budget because we're paying admin.
No. Time out, Pam.
Okay,
Those positions have been 4 positions we always have had in the operating budget. They were simply cut from the operating budget last year and put into school choice. It was just a funding
so
center.
last year we were funding it differently than
Yes.
we are now, and then what about the year before that?
They were in the operating budget.
Okay, so
This
they
was a-
temporarily went out of the operating budget for 1 year,
That
and
was
then
it.
they got put back in the operating budget.
And I said that last year, we can move them
Okay,
into school
so
choice for a year.
That if, so I do think that should be said, that move was a temporary one, because
Yep.
you're gonna get people really fired up if that
Okay.
is not made really explicit.
Well, it's gotta be, it's
Absolutely
gotta be
not.
made clear, and that's
Yeah.
because we did that based on the feedback that we got.
Right, cause
About
that's gonna be
reducing, about
heard.
reducing the discretionary line item.
Mhm.
And we
Right.
want you to go back and take a look to see if there's anything you can do with our,
Right.
with E&D and
Right.
with school
I get
choice.
that.
Because
Yes.
there are two cash accounts that we've got, the
Right.
revolving accounts that we've got a little bit more latitude with what we can use it for. And that's what we executed last year to try to reduce that discretionary amount that went to the towns. So you, again,
Right.
that also gets caught into what we were talking about with E&D and school choice.
Completely get that, just make sure the way that it's said is not interpreted as a whole bunch of administrators got raises.
Right.
You know what I mean?
No,
That's not what happened.
No,
But the way that we're paying for administrative salaries was temporarily different last year.
yes.
And it has to go back in.
And I said that over and over last year. Yes.
And then the other thing is the questions that you're gonna get is, okay, how do we justify those 9 FTE positions, including 2 coaches being cut, with the priorities of educational initiatives that include literacy, the science of reading and open SciEd that are very dependent on the work of the coaches with the teachers to make that stuff happen.
Correct.
And so I guess those are gonna be the concerns, I think, that we're gonna hear. How do we make that work, given what we're trying to do academically?
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, but I think it's, one of the coaches is, when Chairman Stevenson was talking about E&D. So we had one of our coaches leave last year. His position was in the budget. We chose not to refill it because we knew it was going to be a very, very tight budget. Because we had to go so much into school choice last year. So that position, was not filled this year, and we're moving forward with it not filled. We did have to make a difficult discussion, and we did talk about our school's initiatives. And that is where we made the coach, but we also can't justify removing teachers from classrooms and increasing class sizes and having people that are not significantly, not specifically attached to our specific learning initiatives for next year.
Now, of those positions, their allocation and where they're located, how specific can we get with the budget presentation?
I cannot, because that,
Right,
yeah.
okay. So one other thing that we did talk about last year that I promised Southwick and promised everybody when we were, is that the coaches, the question of the coaches came up quite often. And when Erin got moved into her new role, her and I had a lengthy conversation about making sure that we took a very deep dive look into justifying what we're doing with the coaches, what they're doing, are we making the best use of that? And that's when her and Jen went into this, they looked at it and they came back with the recommendation that, you know what, we think we can do this with 2 instead of 4. So this is a direct result of us asking them to really take a hard look into this. So,
And clearly,
Yeah.
we would want to keep offering.
Oh,
Yes, there's
absolutely.
no
Not a question.
doubt, not a question. They are doing valuable work and we will be affected by this as we will be affected by the cut of 7 teachers. There's no one in this room who wants to make those cuts and no one who thinks that that's what's best for our students. But we also realize that when you see the numbers, this budget is significantly higher than anything we put forward in recent years. And so we are looking, to make this, as you said, Chairman Stevenson, as efficient as we possibly can and as close to what we need.
Right. We don't want to be cutting coaches, but when we're cutting interventionists who directly impact students on a day-to-day basis, philosophically, if I'm cutting an interventionist and there is an interventionist cut from this,
philosophically, I have to say where my priorities are. And it's always going to be to our K-1, 2 kids learning to read and learning. It's the foundational skills. So none of these cuts are what we want to do. But when you see the discretionary line item, if you tell us that you want half of these positions put back, you're the school committee, you can tell me to put them back, but I think we need to look now at these budget sheets and look at them as a whole. And again, it's your budget, it's not ours. It is your budget. We'll take any directions from you. But it is my job to bring forward a budget that is, as I've always promised, as fiscally responsible as I can. Knowing the 3 towns I live in, knowing that they're not going to do a 2.5 override. And we're bringing in a budget that is at a 3.14% increase, which in a lot of towns would be great. And almost every town would be great right now, but it does have a significant financial impact because this is our resetting year. And if we can bring the coaches back in upcoming years, because things change, great. But grants are drying up. And as we said, we took a significant hit to minimal local contribution, and we've taken significant hits to fixed cost increases for next year. Okay,
All right,
all right,
what
so.
do we got next?
What you want on that?
Should I go through the summary of the assessment sheet?
What you guys want him to go through first?
Doesn't matter.
So it must be.
Probably the summary.
There we go. Sounds like it's on.
Makes the most sense. So the upper half of the budget summary, I can wait to share. And the public can see it.
This one?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
We will.
So the top half of this shows our revenue side, or I should say anticipated revenue side. The top 6 lines are the assessments that the 3 towns would pay. The ones highlighted in green are debt service lines for the school building projects that occurred several years ago. In addition to that, we anticipate about $87,000 of Medicaid reimbursement revenue, $800,000 for regional transportation reimbursement. Our chapter 78 is $10,079,246, which again is almost $93,000 less than this current year. Which is, obviously a negative swing. Our charter school tuition reimbursement went up to $72,481. That would be a result of almost 1 or 2 students attending charter schools that didn't in the past. The way that reimbursement formula works is you get 100% in the student's first year being in the charter school. And then I think it's 60% their second year, 30 or 40 in their third year, and then nothing afterwards. So when you have some students join charter schools, right out of the gate, your reimbursement's higher. And then, over time, it just lowers. So if you look at last year, basically what that $7,000 figure tells me is the students who had in charter schools had been there for a long time.
Does that reimbursement fully cover the cost of the
No,
charter
not
schools? No, okay, so that's why that's why that
Yeah.
came up before as still.
Yeah, but I mean,
Makes you feel better, but no.
yeah, every little bit
I
helps,
have to
right?
ask questions because I don't get most of this stuff.
Our E&D, as Jen had mentioned, we want to use 900,000 of that to help offset the operating budget. And local tuition and fee charges, we feel will be flat. I don't believe any fees will be increasing. So when you total all that revenue together, you get $28,879,812, which represents a 3.14% increase over this current year's budget. Steve, if you want to scroll down to the expenditures side, thank you. So the next part is the expenditures, which have to match the revenue, the anticipated revenues, or else your budget's going to be out of balance. So this is where it's broken down into line items. General administration, you see about $2.7 million there. Employee benefits, you see $3.4 million there, which a lot of that driver is the health insurance cost increase that Jen had mentioned. Tuition, you will see, goes down $1.1 million from this current year, and that is the Chapter 74 non-resident vocational students now being part of the town's student enrollment, not ours. What that still keeps, though, is our school choice and charter students, as well as our students that go to CTEC. Next is maintenance district-wide. That's $432,182. You may be wondering where that $120,000 increase is. Some of that is spread in the buildings. That maintenance line right there is just district-wide. Things that wouldn't fit into one of the buildings, so it's just in a different cost center, basically. Next would be student transportation at $2.3 million, which you see has gone up quite a bit. That's just the cost of transportation these days.
What does RNT and SNT stand for?
Regular needs transportation, special needs transportation, vocational.
And also.
And that vocational is our in-district vocational, right?
No.
No,
No,
okay.
those are your CTEC students.
So that CTEC would be in-district though. Who pays for out-of-district vocational
The
transportation?
towns.
The town.
You'll see that on the assessment sheet.
Okay.
I added a line for it, so you see it there, rather
Okay.
than it being embedded in somewhere else, because it's new. So
Okay,
I think it's important for folks
yeah,
to see
no,
it.
that makes sense. Okay. So
Um,
this is the transportation that we as a district pay.
Yeah, that's also Medco, foster care, McKinney Vento, field trip.
Okay,
Anything that requires a bus except for athletic transportation, that's in the high school line.
okay.
And also, last year's Director of Finance and Operations did offset a portion of student transportation with some grant funding. So that isn't actually what we paid for a total last school year for transportation. It's kind of like that misleading number.
Yeah. It looks like it went up 430.
It looks like it went up 437.
Well, that's why I keep asking these questions. So
It's a
didn't-
great question.
Okay.
No, some of it was offset in other funding sources
Okay.
last year.
Budget gymnastics that were done
Yes.
last year to try to make it work.
Okay,
And
I
this
got
is one
you.
of the line items that adjusted.
Oh,
Another one. I'll find out.
okay. Next line item is insurance. That's not like employee health insurance. That's our district's liability insurance and auto insurance and workers' comp insurance, unemployment insurance, things like that. Technology lease you see stays the same as last year. We do have some leases running out this current year, but we also have to, start a new lease because those devices have to be replaced. The leases that are out now are they're gonna be obsolete, for lack of a better term, pretty soon. Next two line items are your debt service. It's broken down into capital improvement, which you see is going down because a lot of that debt has been paid off. Building project debt service went down very slightly, still at 1.6 million. Then you get the three schools, which you see 2.6 million for Woodland, 3.2 for Powder Mill, and 6.2 for the regional school. And then the last one is special education, which you see coming in just over $4 million. But you saw the drivers for that cost increase on the slide in Jen's presentation. It's a lot of it's out of district tuition, and sometimes the cost of providing contracted services to students in district.
So the general admission, general administration line,
We always get questions about that one.
that makes up predominantly the salaries of the employees, correct?
The reason there's a 397,962, because that is where our salary reserve line item is. And that's where we hold money for potential raises.
Yes, so that does include administrators' raises. It includes, office supplies and things.
No. Where are salaries of the teachers? Are they in the school line items?
Yes.
So, yeah, so we always get questions about
Okay.
what's in general administration.
Okay, as Jen said, salary reserve is part of that, and that's, you know, money that would be used for, you know, during the contract negotiations.
Okay.
And that's where we house our SRO.
I got you. So going back to where we talked about the 9 FTEs and that extra savings from those positions being removed are coming out of the Woodland, Powder Mill, and Southwick Regional School line items. Is that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
That's good.
so,
The coaches actually would probably be,
Be under general.
yeah.
admin.
okay,
Yeah.
all right.
The coaches are under general admin. One of the positions, it was grant funded, so that position is not grant funded this year, so that is a cut. You wouldn't see that anywhere. And then the other, so there was 9, you take away 3, so 6 full-time teachers are out of the budget this year.
And am I correct that we have 2 SROs and plan to maintain 2 SROs?
Yes.
Yeah, and
And that we fund one of those 2?
Yep.
Is that correct?
Mhm.
And that one is coming out of general administration?
Yes,
And what is the expense of that?
$80,000.
So that's essentially equivalent to an FTE position. Or more.
It's worth noting that, you know, next year, when we're not negotiating with any of the bargaining units, you will see that general administration increase be a lot smaller than the 379,000 that you see that now. Because the salaries will be known,
right,
and they'll be in the
Schools, you'll see those go
Yeah.
up, yeah.
That's the way every school district has to do their budgeting when they're negotiating, because unless your negotiation's finished before it's budget time, which is extremely rare, the things are happening concurrently, and, you know, that salary reserve money has to live somewhere, but you can't put it in the school line items because
right, because you don't know, it's
you don't
not a
know
fixed
who,
number yet.
you don't know who it's going to.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So
Yep.
it's, yeah.
Yep, that makes sense. And again, one of those sort of important points that I think needs to be clarified.
Sure. So you'll see that, the bottom line, expenditures matches the revenue. Underneath, we have grants and other funding sources listed. The first 3 are your ESSA title grants. We anticipate a slight decrease in grant revenue. You know, just, there's a lot of, I don't know, unsettled feelings right now about federal funding and everything like that, and you know, we've been told to plan for a slight decrease in the title.
Now, in those grants, Aaron, when we had our first meeting here prior to you being put into your role, there was a comment or concern that was brought up that the grants were going down because of some sort of new calculation methodology that the state was using. And did we go back and
Yeah, so our-
check? Because that was one of
And
the
our
other things.
calculation is up.
Okay,
While they're predicting grants overall go down, our number of students that would make us eligible is going up.
Okay.
From about 6% to 9%, so we may end up defying the odds. I think it's just a lot to bank on right now.
no, that's
But
fine, because,
our number is up, so I am cautiously hopeful that we will be more evenly when
Right.
everyone else goes down. I don't think we'll see an increase necessarily in that way, but we may stay closer to even because our percentage of students who are.
no, that's
taking
good,
this-
because at the time that I asked the question, the answer was, well, we think it's gonna go down, we have no interest in trying to figure it out, which I didn't really like. So I'm glad we looked into it, and at least we have a better idea what's going on now. Okay, awesome.
And I'm glad that this information is on there, because I've already received questions, so I think that we can anticipate questions from our constituents about how we are thinking about and planning for potential changes in funding at the federal level. So I think we should be anticipating those questions.
Okay, I just need to tell you that all of Title I, 2A, 4A, that's all teaching positions. IDEA is almost all paraprofessional positions. Rural school aid grant, that is all your special ed those are teaching positions and, school choice revolving, that is for out of district special education. It's actually should be up another 100,000, but I just kept it there. Fingers crossed, because special ed keeps going up by the day and it's just moving. And I like to talk to Nick today. I said, we just can't keep adding hundreds of thousands to the budget.
At some point, you have
Have
to
to
draw a
just
line
draw a
and
line.
stand and move forward with it.
And
Yeah.
so if we continue to get like these changes of students coming in, there may potentially need to be a special ed teacher cut to eventually pay for some of these out of district special ed tuitions, because we can't just keep moving the needle up, but we have to meet the needs of our kids in our district. So again, not easy decisions, not easy conversations, but trying to bring forward a fiscally responsible budget, took the act of every single person
Well-
sitting in this room.
I mean, it's, I know that 880 number is higher than where we were last year, but looking at the fixed cost increases that are out of our control and the realignment of the local minimal contribution and only having the number that's actually, from my perspective, is actually impressive is the 3.14% increase. The 880s irrelevant. It's because you got to look at where all these, the left hand is getting more than the right. I mean, that money is moving when we reallocated where these other district vocational kids are. That 3.14 wouldn't change, but if we didn't make the switch, the 880 wouldn't be 880. It'd be different. It'd be a different number. So
Would.
we're moving this around. Once we've got this rebalanced, we'll be able to move forward better with a better idea as to what's coming.
And Pam, see how it was 1.582,576
Yes.
in school choice?
Yep,
It's one-
I see that.
Those are your admin positions that we've just moved out of there. And it's now just all special ed out of district.
Note the
And there are
increase
there's two teachers and the 504 coordinator in school choice.
Yes.
And an assistant principal that was added last year. We didn't add another, so we did not add, last year we had 5 admin positions and therefore we're moved back to the budget, but we did, because we added a new assistant principal at Woodland, we did not add that position to the operating budget. We did keep it still in school choice. We didn't add that admin position to the budget.
Last year, but it's.
Or this year, we did not either.
Oh, it's not, okay.
It's not.
So
Not
4
even
of the
this year.
5 went back to the operating.
Okay,
Mhm.
okay.
Note the increase in circuit breaker use as well. For those who may be unfamiliar with what circuit breaker is, it's reimbursement for high cost special ed services. We get from the state every year. We file a claim form and you're allowed to carry a year's worth of it forward, which a lot of districts try to do. We, at this point, are not in the position to be able to do that, especially with the proposed operating budget we're asking for now. It was important for us to look at as many alternative funding sources as possible, because we do understand what the ask is. But that's not a trend that we want to continue going forward with. That circuit breaker money is, that's where you fund things that you don't expect. If you get a student that moves into the district that has very high needs and possibly needs a 1-to-1 or even a nurse or an out of district placement, circuit breaker funding is for that. Should I go on to the assessment sheet now, or do you have any other questions about the summary?
You okay, Mr. Fox?
I'm okay.
All right. Thank you. All right, so going through the assessment sheet and, please stop me and ask questions. I've never presented one of these before. Municipal budgets did not work this well. But anyway, you'll see the total required local contribution number just comes straight from the chapter 70 worksheet. It was the same number that you saw in Jen's presentation. Right underneath it, you got the chapter 70 funding, which may fluctuate based on various iterations as the Massachusetts state budget goes through the process. Right now, it's based on $74 dollars per pupil times the, the 1204 that we have. That might go up. I mean, in FY 25, it got all the way up to $104 per student. It started at 30. So I mean, that might go up slightly, which would be good. We might still be in the negative, but again, every bit helps. So if you add the required local contribution to the chapter 70 aid, you get the total required net school spending of $22,380,680.
Nick, does the various versions of the state budget that comes out, does that also affect required local contribution, or no, is it just really more chapter 70 that gets
It
affected?
might fluctuate a little bit.
We never go back to the towns.
No, you don't, yeah.
Right, because that comes back
It
after.
comes after the fact.
After the fact, yeah.
Well, hang on, let's make sure I know historically, you have never gone back to the towns.
Because it always goes up.
Right, well, right, but again, the other reason and the other option that you had, if we get increases, because I think my first year, the number did go up, but we didn't have to go back because we were able to pull those funds out of E&D to make sure that we offset it. As we continue down this road and that E&D level is less and less and less, I don't want anybody to think that there will never be an opportunity or a situation where we won't ever go back. You might need to at some point, but hopefully we don't need to.
All right, moving on to the second section. That's pretty much just a repeat of the other revenue that you saw on the budget summary sheet. The various other revenues we're going to pull in, totaling $24,325,161. Going down further to section 3 is the non-discretionary section. So this is where you get the money that does not count towards net school spending. Your transportation there, you see, there's a little calculation there. The $2.1 million figure, I backed out the $800,000 from that we anticipate for the regional transportation reimbursement. So the total that would be assessed to the towns would be 1.3 million, not the whole 2.1 that you saw on the summary sheet. So that's where that offset comes into play. The next two lines are your debt service for capital improvement projects and for the school building projects. We have district services to towns. There's $12,000 for Southwick. I don't know if I can actually accurately explain what that's for, but that's general.
Unlimited use of the building.
Okay, there we go. I knew there was
It's an
something.
annual rent
Okay, so
or
perfect.
usage fee. Is that probably a better word for it?
Yeah, okay. And it's just for assessed to Southwick, right?
Yes.
The next line number 21 is where I put the transportation for the vocational students that will be going to Smith and Westfield Tech. So you'll see it's broken up into Southwick and Granville because Tolland does not have any students attending those schools. And the way we broke it up is we took the percentage of students that go to each school from each town. And then, broke it out by bus route and basically figured out what percentage each town owed that way. For how many kids they have attending each school, because both the bus routes together total 154,710. So if you divide that by 2, that's the cost of one of the bus routes. So the WTA one costs half of that number. The Smith one costs the other half of that number. And if you break it down by percentage of students from each town that go to each one of those schools and add the 2 routes together, you come to the 2 figures that are there for Southwick and Granville.
So do we bill the town, do we pay that bill, and do we bill the towns for it?
Yeah, because the Lower Pioneer Valley Educational Collaborative didn't want to build the towns directly because they don't have an agreement with the towns.
Okay,
They have an agreement with us.
okay,
So basically what we're, gonna do is assess the towns that and we will pay LPVEC. Because
okay,
otherwise, what would have to happen is the towns would have to find their own transportation.
Right.
They'd have to go out to bid,
Yeah.
they would have to, and which, and they're not gonna get a better price than what LPVEC is gonna offer, but LPVEC probably wouldn't bid on it.
Right.
Because they don't work with individual towns, they work with member districts.
okay,
So we feel that this is the best way to get the students
Okay.
bus where they need to be. And, just taking the onus off the towns for having to find, that transportation for the students.
thank you.
Yep. So your total non-discretionary charges are then on, underneath, in bold there totaling $3.4 million. So if you add the non-discretionary to the anticipated revenue, you get $27,777,976. Then we get to line number 23, where you see the proposed operating budget figure of $28,879,812. When you back the anticipated revenue and non-discretionary charges out of that, you get $1.1 million in discretionary. Which is divided up, through each of the three towns based on the formula on the bottom under operational.
Okay, so I'm usually pretty good at this, but I need an explanation. Why is on our previous sheet that we were talking about the difference between fiscal year 24, 25 and 26? We had a delta of 880,564.
Yeah.
Now we've got a discretionary line at 1.1 million. Why the difference of $21,000?
Minimal local contribution.
Okay. No, that's fine. I knew there was an easy answer. I'm drawing a blank on this right now.
That's okay.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Okay.
So then it's broken down a little bit more detailed there. When we get to section 5, you've got the minimal local contribution reiterated there, the non-discretionary reiterated there.
I just said that was a great question.
Oh.
Somebody will ask us that.
Yeah, absolutely. Then on line number 24 there, it's, you have your discretionary reiterated again. Adding that all together, you get total regional assessments of $14,361,965 for Southwick, $397,747 for Tolland, and $2,096,373 for Granville. Going to the very bottom, you see those numbers reiterated again. Highlighted in yellow, you see this year's assessment, so we can compare, you can see the difference. Southwick's increases $822,554 or 6.08%. Tolland's goes down $81,177, which is a decrease of 16.95%. And Granville's goes down $111,101 or 5.03%. So overall, the assessments went up 3.88%.
What was and you may not have it here, but again, this will be a good thing to have, especially when we meet with the towns. What was the increase overall from 24 to 25?
The budget increase?
Like that 3.88% number
Yeah.
and the Southwick increase and the Tolland.
Get that for you.
Yeah,
That would be
that's
important because
easy.
I'm gonna bet that increase for Southwick last year was a lot more than 6.08%.
Yeah, we can get that right off the budget summary sheet from the budget that was passed last year.
Yeah.
That's very easy to get. For sure. At the very bottom of this, you see that the two formulas for the breakdown of assessments. Operational and capital. The capital one is the same for a 5-year cycle, so those numbers will look exactly the same as they did last year and next year. So we have one more budget year with those, and then we're gonna have to redo it in February of 2027, I believe. Operational, though, will fluctuate based on the average enrollment over the 5 preceding fiscal years for well, basically the 5 years that came before the budget year that the computation is being done for. So those
So
numbers
where-
are different.
So where does the? That might be just the allocation of the votes for the regional. Because in the regional agreement, there is a stipulation in there that the percentages, and I'm thinking it might be because we have obviously these weighted votes set up between the towns.
Yeah.
That gets reset every 10 years when the census is done. That
And that's
gets,
for capital.
no, I don't know. It might, maybe it is for capital.
capital-
It's
gets
different
reset
for
every
capital
5 years.
versus operation.
Yeah, I know, but then there could be this, there's another one that's in the regional agreement that we had to review or redo 2 years ago. Because we just got the census numbers finalized. So we put,
3 years ago when we did
Yeah,
capital.
we
That was
did,
the
okay,
capital
all
a couple
right.
years ago.
Because there's one of them that
Capital
gets
budget.
reset every 10 years based on the census that we've got dictated in the regional agreement.
Yes, the capital will get reset every 5 years. It's based at half on the new census data
Yeah.
and half on the same metric
Instead of
as the
weighted
operational.
votes, they
Yeah.
get reallocated.
I did
Yeah.
not.
Yeah, I feel like in the whole time that I had served on the committee,
Oh, it
my weighted vote has never
No,
changed.
no, no,
It was me.
it changes
Thought
like
it
this.
changed.
We got to
The
read
number-
Like,
weighted
put it
vote-
to my toe.
Yes, because it's not, the census hasn't moved that much,
We'll just
but
do
it did,
20 day for
it
that.
reshifted, but it didn't end up
That can
changing
stay
the
at
percentage
21.
at all.
Gotcha.
Me too.
But it dictates that we have to reset that
I thought it was.
every, like, after the census is complete, when those numbers come out, we reset that for the next 10 years. All right. Well, that was a short presentation.
Well, it wasn't, but it's very.
No, it's, so, listen,
Very, very.
this
heavy.
is the long meeting, so,
Sorry.
no, so, listen, it's one of those
Oh, sorry, and then we
necessities,
do
oh,
have the
yes.
capital requests in there. Sorry, if you go back to my. Yeah,
Back to.
yeah,
this-
go all the way to
yeah,
the last. the
Yeah,
slide
I just
before,
gotta
thank you.
reshare it again, Jen.
It's okay. Thank you, Nick.
So this is the equivalent of dipping your toe in the water.
Which one
I
did you
feel
wanna
like
go
we
to?
could
With
do
Capital.
a leg, with legs in, okay, that's good.
Like, you know.
Yeah,
Good.
sorry.
So just the two capital cost requests that we talked about at the November roundtable. We talked about the boiler project for Woodland and the SRS study and design with those two numbers there. And then for the track, I do want to let you know that we did apply for CPC funds for the full cost of the track. But as I've done this in the past, we won't know if we get CPC funds until that night. And on that night, they
Approve the
can
budget.
at the night that the capital cost requests go to the town, on the floor, they can make a motion to amend the amount that we're requesting
Okay.
to borrow. Am I correct on that? Correct. So we're asking for it now, but hopefully we'll get CPC funds. But we know we have to do this either way. So we're just covering our bases.
Well,
Hopefully it'll be 192,000 less.
There have been some quite interesting recommendations for CPC utilization. This might be quite a valuable one to, hopefully the town will approve.
It uses this. I mean, this is.
So does,
So remind me again, what is it that we're trying to do to the track?
would they have to, Mr. Whitehander, I'm gonna acknowledge and let you handle that one, because I'm not that detailed. So why don't you
Sure.
explain that out?
So the track is composed of 3 layers of surfacing. You have a base layer that's underneath. Then you have the actual asphalt surface, and then on top of that, you have what's called a wear layer. And the wear layer is a sprayed on poly surface with granules mixed in that provides that textured, grippy surface for you to walk and run and all the activities that go on in that space. Every about 10 years, the manufacturer recommends replacement of the wear layer based on site conditions as seen. We've done so well with enforcing our regulation, maintaining the track that we're in year 12 now. And the engineer said that it is time to do it. So we had John Amato, who's the district's, we contracted him for our athletic master plan. He was also the original designer of the track project when it went in 2014, 13. He was the one that came out and did the assessment and said, yep, you're overdue right now, so it's time. And what we're gonna be doing is taking off that top wear layer and adding a new wear layer over the top, but also addressing some minor issues with cracking around the edges. Some fence posts that have allowed water to get kind of underneath and into the base layer, and just positioning the track to maintain, to be in a really good spot for the town for the next 10 to 12.
And failure to do that would endanger damaging the layers underneath. That would result in a much higher cost to repair, correct?
Yeah, so if we were to replace the underlayment, it would probably be a 2.5 to 5 times the cost.
And I know we talked about the boiler issues in November. Remind me again why it's prudent to do both of these two, Woodland and SRS, this year, or at least this phase of it, because I seem to remember that this is like a multi-phase process. Like, why can we not tackle one of these right now and push the other one off?
So short answer, I would say in my professional opinion, I'm concerned about larger maintenance issues with both heating plants. In the district, I would say that we have 1, 2, 3, 4 large heating plants. So Woodland has 2 separate heating plants in it. And Powder Mills heating plant is in excellent shape. It was replaced during the renovation. It's been maintained very adequately, at least in my time here. It's fantastic, efficient, wonderful. Woodland had half of its heating plant replaced during the project, and the equipment that was replaced in 2014, again, is efficient. It's in great shape. It's been well maintained. The other half was installed in 1989, about 2 weeks after my birthday. And it's showing its age. We have a lot, I'm sorry. I just love to throw that. Eric Morgan really loved that because he started about a week after I was born. So the 1989 boilers, the HP Smiths, are showing their age. We've had a lot of operational issues with them over the years. And the big challenge with them is that if we lose a section, we will not be able to replace that. The sections are no longer something that we can replace on those, and that's the heart and soul of a wet-based sectional. That's Woodland. The powder mill, like I said, is fine. The high school has 2 separate heating plants that are both pre-project. So we've got the original hydrotherm boilers that were installed in 1971. They're still in place and they're still in use today. Their operation, they're very inefficient. They are repairable. We still have parts on the shelves. We can continue to repair them if need be, and we do maintain them. The Viessmann boiler, the higher efficiency one that does about as much as that whole plant, hydrotherm plant, is from 2002. And it's starting to rack up some costly repairs. We just replaced the main burner blower motor 2 weeks ago for just under $10,000. It had to be flown in directly from Weishap in Germany. Which was costly.
This is what you called me about, right? We were
I called
touching,
you.
somebody called me.
I
We were
called you.
touch and go with, oh my God,
If it goes.
we may have to,
Before
Yeah, it was a
school's not going on for a couple days.
Oh, we-
Well, we would have to definitely make emergency arrangements in order to heat the building if we lost them. So you can feel the urgency in getting something done there. Now, to get back to your question about the steps in the process in order to do these things. So at Woodland, it's a little bit more of a simplistic project where we need to engage an architect and an engineer, an MEP engineer, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and design a new heating plant and then go ahead and install. That's the 2 phases of that project. Phase 1 is going to be the design, which you're seeing an estimate for in front of you there. Phase 2 would be the construction, which we'll have to borrow for at a later time after we've got a design, because there's just no way to estimate it without it, especially with the construction environment the way it is right now. The high school. So the high school, there was some question about the adequacy of the heating plant that's in place there now. I can tell you from experience on the coldest of days, I start to get a little worried about our corner rooms and places. If we have a really long stretch of sub-zero weather, we may not be able to keep the most comfortable and happy temperatures in all of our classrooms because the equipment just doesn't have the capacity. On a day like today, this week, you wouldn't even know. It's perfectly fine. So during the building project, they did not increase the capacity of the heating plant, even though they added on somewhere between 50 and 65,000 square feet of building. So In order to make up the difference, some areas were electrified, and that is to say they were, variable refrigerant flow units were installed in the library, the main offices, and some of the tech labs, and they have taken over all of the heating and cooling for those areas. That's a total of about 25,000 square feet, so there's a delta there in square footage lost, and that's kind of the capacity limitations that we see on those coldest days. So in order to solve that problem, and given the fact that our BRF equipment is now reaching the end of its useful life because the gas stuff that we have has a much longer useful life than BRF stuff. We need to engage the engineering firm in a study before we can even commission a design. The study would take a look at the overall HVAC needs of the building as a whole and determine the best course of action for the design. And in order to make that process not take 3 years, we've decided to put the study and the design in the same budget cycle so that we have a design ready at the same time as the wood. That's the plan right now.
So basically, in a nutshell, we've kind of delayed this as long as we can, and delaying it any longer, the risk of us running into a massive issue goes up quite significantly. Is that a fair?
Accurate, very accurate, yes.
We've kind of kicked this can about as far as we need to. I don't think we're looking to initiate the constructions both at the same time, are we? Didn't we say we were gonna stagger those 1 year or not, or are they gonna end up going at the same time?
So that would be up to the Buildings and Grounds Subcommittee and the FinCom Committee to make a
Yeah.
decision on whether or not that's financially viable at the same time. The other question is, we're engaging the same architect. Will we have the ability to accomplish both of those projects at the same time? That's contractor availability, and then obviously construction management. Are we gonna be able to do this over a summer where the schools are unoccupied? What's the extent of the work at the high school? Because the study's really gonna guide you.
And without getting A done, we don't know what B looks like.
Yeah, we don't know what to expect until we have the study and the design in hand, and then we can move forward with a greater idea of what's going.
So, thank you for explaining.
Sure.
I think obviously you're gonna have to re-explain that multiple times.
That's okay.
At town meetings and such. So I think something that I think we should point out when we are presenting this is like the track one. Once we do that, we're good for another 10 to 12 years, right?
Yeah.
This one is just part
Phase
one of, and
A
I,
larger project
exactly,
that
that
is
is
required
gonna,
from a preventative maintenance program.
right.
In order to make sure that your schools are able to be open in the winter so that your kids can learn.
Right, exactly. And that just to kind of point out that we would have to ask for future capital.
Yep.
Money related to that in upcoming years.
And just to point out, the construction costs are considerably higher than the design costs.
Yeah. Yeah, this is the smaller of two asks. But
Factor three.
we can't get to construction requests until we know what we're dealing with. Now, I want to remind everybody that last year we went into budget with a 0.
Mhm.
Just capital request. So. And one of the things that was up for the capital request last year were those boilers that we decided to push off to this year. All right, what do we got next?
My reports.
The rest of the 90% of our meetings.
Okay, so, I just want to proudly congratulate, Matt Sterling, our advanced placement English teacher up at the regional school. He is our Grinspoon Award winner this year. We were able to deliver the marching band and his apple, and his mom and sister, and I believe his aunts were there. On February 12th, we got to, present him. He was thrilled. He is an amazing teacher. We have seen the number of students participating in English 11 skyrocket with him. And not only that, but his scores are through the roof. And just having discussions with Mr. Sterling, you realize what an amazing teacher he is. Constantly talks to me about community and relationships, and that all kids, like his classroom is a place for all students. And let me tell you, when we were there delivering, I think every student he's ever had came into his classroom to hug him. They love him. So couldn't have gone to anyone better. He is a perfect example of what we would like to see in all of our teachers. He's there for kids, really takes pride in his accomplishments in his classrooms and really brings learning to life. So we're thrilled for him.
All right. I am going to make an executive decision in light of the length of this meeting that we've gone over the budget. Let's push this master plan update to our next meeting.
Okay.
All right, there's nothing
Urgent.
catastrophic or urgent in there. We're certainly gonna honor the request of the master plan committee that we have it on there, but tonight's not the night that we need to go through this. Anybody have an issue with that? Okay. So done. You're up, but I don't think you've got anything, right? You just kind of done.
Much, and the budget was the centerpiece of this meeting for sure, but, I do want to announce that, Eric Wykander, our supervisor of buildings and grounds, has tendered his resignation and will be leaving us as of March 28th. So the job, I believe, was posted today, to replace him. So I wanted to make everybody aware, though my time with Mr. Wykander was short. I, have a great admiration and respect for how much he knows about this place and the buildings and the needs and, there's certainly gonna be large shoes to fill. That is not easy, not only to find somebody to do that job, but to do it with the knowledge and dedication that he's had. And it did not take me long to learn that being here. So I'd like to thank him for his time here and I wish him the best of luck in his next chapter.
Absolutely. So based on that, the little explanation for the boilers, I have one request. Please, I could have some time carved out to be able to allocate that onto something that we could give out to the towns members when they're coming into the meetings, because I think that's gonna be important information, and I think it would be very difficult for any of us to try to give a reasonable rendition of what you went through with the importance of why we need to do this.
So my new position is not in Singapore.
All right.
I can make myself available to carry the torch because.
Was that an option?
Well, I just, no. I'm just saying, this district is very near and dear to my heart, my wife is.
Look, if you could
Is it not?
grace us with your presence during the town meetings, I would be greatly appreciative of that.
Listen, I'm not here to run off into the night. I'm happy to see these projects.
No, that would be great. That would be fantastic.
And if you just want the written portion.
No,
I'm
I mean,
happy to-
I didn't want to, if you're willing to do that, I will graciously accept that. I think that would be a wonderful addition to being able to help us get these things through, because this is detailed stuff.
Yeah.
I've certainly learned a tremendous amount from you and your definitions and the breakdown that we've had in our meetings, and I know this much about what we're doing, so if you're able to be there, that would be great.
I think we can make some.
Thank you very much. All right, policies, we got nothing up for us. Action items.
Move to approve consent agenda items as listed above, recommended.
Second.
All right, no questions on this. Raise of hands to approve. Aaron, let the record show the motion passes 500.
Move to approve Southwick Regional Pool 25-26 Program of Studies, recommended.
So moved.
Questions on this? All right, show of hands to approve the motion. Aaron, let the record show the motion passes 500. All right, is there anything that anybody has, I'm not going through every one of these, any subcommittees, liaisons that have of importance that need to be discussed? Okay, the only thing I know we've got an athletics meeting coming up on March the 19th.
With negotiations.
We have negotiations tomorrow.
In a finance.
Yep, finance tomorrow morning,
Yeah.
where we can dive into this stuff. Okay, other than that, I don't believe we have anything for public comment. You guys want to jump in? No, okay. Okay, old business. Tip up, new business.
So the only thing that I just want to say is give my little philosophical 2 cents with regard to the first draft of the budget that I heard today. Because I know FinCom is supposed to meet again tomorrow before
Yeah.
this. So, I I completely get the challenge here, and I know in the time that I have served on the committee that Jen and whoever the business administrator was has always brought forth a very fiscally responsible budget. And I completely agree that we have trimmed and trimmed and trimmed and trimmed and trimmed, and we keep trimming. This may be, however, the first year that I'm not seeing level service, that I'm now seeing cuts. And I know that bad stuff happens, and sometimes that's just the way that life shapes down. But it is concerning to me, and the loss of the teaching positions is very concerning to me. And I completely get what you were saying before about like, well, when I look at where I have to cut and I look at impact to kids, right? So if we're talking about an interventionist versus a coach, I completely get that, right? And so what I'd like to urge the FinCom to take a look at is to take a look at if there's anything in that general administration line item that is not directly affecting students that can be trimmed down so that we may potentially be able to get an FTE back in. Just take a look.
That's fair. Have we got anything else? All right, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So.
All right, all in favor? All right, Aaron, let the record show the motion passes 500. Thank you, everybody. Have a fantastic evening.